Recording is now on. Yep. Of course, feel free to tweet, post on LinkedIn, whatever you want, using those hashtags. This is the final cohort to do this with. The mics, if you can keep them on mute at this time, and but come off mute as soon as we get into the Q&A section. Feel free, as you already are, using chat effectively. Keep an eye on Facebook group. I'm pretty sure I have clicked on the right session tonight, so everybody is on the right call. What else we got? Recording will be posted not in 12 hours. I've already put up this morning's recording, and I'll put this one up before I go to bed tonight as well. So that will be completed. Please complete the metrics that matter. Some people are commenting. They're all the same. And yeah, it's a standard like industry survey for trainers. So the actual questions are the same, but it aligns to the specific event for me. And Facebook engagement for assignments. Once again, I'm going to keep the Facebook group open till I sense it's time to shut it down. I don't have a firm date on when I will do that. But you'll see there's lots of assignments going to be at the end of this. One key part of it is around booking time with me to go over a one-on-one. So scheduling a time with me to go through that and for you to present back to me what your 12, 24, and 36 month career plan looks like. What are you going to do? What are you going to apply? I'm already seeing some amazing videos coming through on branding and things like that. Mike, I just started watching yours. Naturally, I had to stop because I'm going to need a bit more time. It's a good lengthy video. But I'm so impressed. FloJo's the other one that pops into my mind. Great video. Seeing the brands come out and get stronger. I think there's going to be lots of opportunities in the coming year around the community with Microsoft. I'm privy to some initiatives that are going to happen shortly. Hopefully they will get signed off. It's going to be some exciting times in the coming months in the community, and it's a good time to kind of be branding strong. Please forgive me. I have contracted a bloody cold in summer, which is not great, and so I might be a bit sniffly and stuff. Sorry about that. Anyhow, let's get underway. So, anyone want to chuck in the chat where this quote comes from? I like this picture. It kind of really stretches out into the distance. Yes, Dr. Seuss, 100% correct. Is really, you know, what is the path that you're going to be on ahead of you? You really have the choice. And one thing that's been heavy on my mind lately is what happened in Detroit. In Detroit, there are all these manufacturing plants of automobiles, right? Cars, things like that. And what happened is that ultimately the industry collapsed and all these people are out of job. And so many of the reports and stuff in media, people are like, I've worked for 30 years for this company. And now they're gone bankrupt and I'm out of a job and it's their fault and I should be compensated and stuff. Listen, at the end of the day, your career is your career. If you can't sense the movement or the signs of the times, you've got no one to blame but you, right? You need to kind of watch. Now, I'm not saying that gives businesses free, you know, opportunity to exploit workers, but it's important to understand that at the end of the day, you choose your direction. You choose the path that you're on, and in those choices becomes power, right? Because ultimately your pathway, the direction you want to go in life will come back, you know, come to you or come down to you. So that's why I say, oh, the places you'll go. My wife and I have had this as one of our sayings for many, many years. We love the Dr. Seuss book around it. And really that life is a massive journey and you can choose where it can go for you. So this module is all around the career options. And I am aware that the only one I didn't mention in my experience, so I'm going to mention it now, even though there's not a slide dedicated to it, is one of the options that you have is to become a project manager. And you can run projects and you can, you know, you can either develop skills in more formal or old school methodologies like waterfall, or you can adopt some modern ones like Agile, Scrum, Lean, these different types of methodologies. And there's always, of course, the Dynamics 365 Sure Step, which incidentally, all the Fast Tracks team use still to manage their project delivery. You know, they like that kind of control construct, haven't gone so agile. And so It's only one I know that I've left out of this, and so I just wanted to address it straight up. It's definitely one of the career options or paths that you can have. There's lots of training resources. Neil Benson does a great series, helped a lot of people pass their Scrum qualifications and become Scrum Masters. So something to consider if a project, managing projects is part of your journey. For me, in my experience, project managers often make or break a project. And I know that's a big call, but I'm just saying based on my experience. I've worked with project managers that thought that running a project was all around the running of the project and not about the deliverables or the outcomes. And I'll never forget a colleague of mine, Dipanka, who still in Sydney, works for KPMG in Sydney now, but used to work for me. And one of the things he said to me, once we were frustrated about project managers, and he was like, when I go buy a TV, I don't care what project methodology they used when I go buy that TV, right? I just want the TV. I don't care if they use Scrum. Well, I don't care if they use Agile, whether they use Waterfall. All I want is my TV. And so many times our clients want a project. They want an outcome. They want a deliverable. But I've seen many projects get derailed because it all comes around to how are we running the project? And the project becomes like the center of the universe rather than the deliverables and the outcomes and things like that. So that's just my opinion. And you'll see why strongly I advocate that where the buck stops on a project should always be the architect. And I've had meetings with Microsoft last year around what's called job task analysis and setting up what the future roles were, that kind of drove out the new qualifications and certifications and things like that. And we unanimously agreed if the buck has to stop anywhere in a project, in a delivery, it needs to be stopped at the architect needs to take responsibility. So I always feel that the senior most role on a team is the architect role if we had a full complement of people on a team. Of course, if you own the company, the buck always stops with you. Anyhow, let's continue on. So I'm going to go through the various roles that I have seen make up the landscape. Some people feel that there's many more roles. I'm going to talk about the 3 that I think are for the 16 years I've been doing this, there's really only 3 roles, even though people create other names for these roles. I see what their roles and responsibilities are fall in 3 clear categories when it comes to Microsoft projects, a business application project. And these 3 roles I'm specifically talking about hands-on with the tools. So the first one is a functional consultant. And as you can see, you can be partner side, customer side, or a freelancer and fit this role of a functional consultant. It's probably almost one of the most key roles because often the functional consultant will always also be the architect. In other words, they'll put the hat on of an architect if an architect based on the scale or the size of the project hasn't been assigned. And so when we look at what type of skills that a functional consultant should have, I've kind of created a list here. So they need to be, of course, an effective communicator. Communication skills is going to be absolutely critical because often the functional consultant engages with the business as well as understands the technology. If we look at the word functional consultant, functional meaning they have hands-on knowledge of the technology. We could easily call this a functional BA. It would fit the same type of role, business analyst. But the thing is that you can get pure business analysts that know how to understand a business, take requirements, engage. But the functional bit is you know how to map business requirements to the technology. In this case, anything in the Power Platform portfolio of products would be an example. They have strong applied knowledge of meeting users' needs through the Power Platform and any of those apps. An in-depth understanding of customizations, configurations, integration, and extensibility, as well as the boundaries and constraints. They know third-party tools. For example, they know what ISV solution should be used rather than trying to jiminy the system into something that's not recognizable, right? Rather than go for a coded solution, they should be the voice of reason about doing stuff without code on a project. And they should default to that way more and more. Basic understanding of solution architecture and quality assurance, once again, is an important part of their role. And so if you were saying, well, how do I train as a functional consultant? I would say, hey, do the technical exams. That's fine. That's just the technology. But you should, Human-centered design gives you massive skills in this area, and I'd recommend anyone doing that. But you need to understand, what is a quality assurance when it comes to a project? How does a QA team run in parallel with a project? What are the things architects need to know? Like, because what I see is a lot of functional consultants ultimately become architects as their career progresses. You need a basic understanding of solution architecture, knowledge of integration with Office 365, Microsoft Azure, and any other application service. You should have a functional knowledge. You don't need to be an expert in any way, but you need to know where the limitations of your knowledge is, and where not to bluff, but to pull in additional area of expertise or people with those resources. Your experience may include, but is not limited to, configuring and security role models. I would expect my functional consultants to know how to do security models for the system end to end. Customize forms, view, visualizations, processes, configure entities, relationships, manage solutions and instances, and configure for mobile. I would expect them these days also to be able to configure up Power Apps portal as an example. But I don't expect them. I've never expected my functional consultants to know code, not even JavaScript, right? As in, yes, a lot of functional consultants learn how to copy and paste JavaScript and use it in projects, but I never required my functional consultants, when I employed them, to ever need to know coding. I just don't see that as their area of responsibility, and I'd much rather get an experienced developer and or experienced coder that knows exactly what they're doing, rather than someone kind of having limited knowledge fudging around. You know, if someone's going to operate on your knee, you want to know that they know how to operate on knees, not that they saw someone else do it and reckon they can just, they can move some things around and it's going to be okay, right? Just making that, you know, analogy to the medical industry. What else? Roles they interact with. So a functional consultant, of course, interacts with a solution architect if the project's large enough. They interact with user experience designers. Now, user experience designers, I don't know if you use them on your project, but that was, you know, I was getting more and more I was demanding more and more that my projects had a user experience designer, because I just saw so many shit projects that there was kind of like a devoid of reality about the person that had to work with the technology 2 weeks later, 3 weeks after go live, 1 month after go live. And user experience design is a critical success factor in making sure that the project is adopted long term. As I said, they often will work very much in tandem with the architect. The architect will say, listen, I need this, I need, you know, these workshops to be run, and often a functional will do that, as well as then build out any functionality without requiring code. They'll integrate with or interface with quality assurance teams, and then if you're in a DevOps scenario, they'll definitely be involved in the full developer through to operations type process. And of course, they'll be involved with administrators. Often functional consultants, as a project was wrapping up, would be involved in educating the admins that were going to take on and maintain the system over a period of time. The next role we have is that of a developer. And, you know, once again, they can be work for Microsoft partners, they can work customer side or be freelancers. So what do? Well, let me just run through the list of what I saw. My list of requirements was for a developer. They're responsible for designing, developing, and securing and extending a platform implementation. So where the limitations had been reached of out-of-the-box functionality, out of what you could do with configuration, then the developer would step in. So there'll be implement application enhancements, custom user experiences, system integrations, data conversions, custom process automation, and custom visualizations. These typically I've found sat within the area of the developer. Interesting, and I hope I don't create too much controversy. If I was looking at pay grades for these three, developers, in my experience, have generally been the lowest paid on projects. Functional consultants are generally higher, and of course, architects have been top of the tree. The reason is, it's relatively easy to validate in the type of projects that we do whether the developer is on point or not. And it's a kind of a very prescribed thing that can be sourced from different quarters. That's just my experience. I paid a lot of people each month in, you know, the final company that I worked for before I stopped working for a big partner. And I just say that the developers, as a rule, were easier to hire and get there were more of them in market than there were functional or architects. Just my experience. Next, skills. What type of skills? So they need to, one of the biggest things that I'd have developers trained on is user interface experience and user interface design, because that was their kind of weakest piece, as well as communication. They should have a strong applied knowledge of the Power Platform. I've seen a lot of projects where developers got involved and built stuff that was already in the platform. In fact, one of the biggest projects, government projects I secured before leaving New Zealand was exactly around this. A .NET team had discovered Dynamics CRM back in those days and said, hey, it's a .NET application. We know .NET, we know SQL, and it was an on-premise infrastructure type project running across, it was a worldwide deployment for an international agency with the New Zealand government. And so what they had done is that they had just ignored all the SDK rules, all the rules around how to interface, direct SQL injections, etc., and absolutely butchered the system until we got called in to take over. This is a big dev house that thought because it was .NET, they could run roughshod over the way it was actually designed. So I require, developers to know the Power Platform, to know the various Dynamics applications, and don't build something for a customer that already exists. They should have an in-depth understanding of customizations, configurations, integrations, and extensibility, and the boundaries and the constraints of those, and know at what point you need to choose a Windows workflow, a workflow assembly, or you need to create a plugin to extend the platform, where you're going to triage data inside the system or outside the system. These are the type of skills I expect my developers to have. Should have a basic understanding of DevOps practice nowadays, and must explore, store, report upon data in the platform. So data lifecycle management is often, more and more developers will be involved in that. Type of skill set specifically, I'd be looking for JavaScript, TypeScript, C#, HTML, .NET, Microsoft Azure skills, Office 365, RESTful web services, ASP.NET, and Power BI. That's kind of the type of broad skill set I'd be expecting from my developers. Now, depending on the size of the project, you'd have multiple people, more front-end designers and back-end, etc., when it came to their development function within a project. Naturally, who do they work with, or the roles they interact with? Is the solution architects, the functional BAs, the DevOps engineers, and of course administrators. User experience designers would be another interaction point for them on any project. And so I see these as the two key roles that ultimately, whether you come in as a grad and start working up the organization, you'll either come as a grad developer or a grad functional, what did I call them? Excuse me, functional consultant. And then ultimately, from a career progression perspective, these roles would generally end up after a period of time as solution architects. Now, one successful project as a senior developer or a senior functional doesn't mean you're ready for prime time as an architect, in my opinion. You've got to have some rough projects. I would say when my staff would come to me and say, man, I want to become an architect, I'd like, okay, get 2 or 3 good-sized projects under your belt, under the watchful eye of another architect, before we'll promote you up and let you lead a project from an architectural point of view. So, yeah, it'd be a progressive thing. I wouldn't just, architects are the top of the technical food chain, in my opinion, when it came to projects. They are accountable for leading the project. They would liaise closely with the person running the project, so the project manager, but they would be accountable for leading it. So I would expect that when I wanted honest answers, the architect should give me the most honest answers. Tell me what type of risk as a project owner that I might be under. And they focus on how the solution addresses the broader business needs. So they're not just focused on the technology, they're understanding what is the implication of this across the business. What are the future states that the design decisions now is either going to create technical debt on a project or make it easy for that business to transition their thinking as time moves forward. What are the skills that they have? Well, they've either come from a dev background or a functional background, in my experience. But They need to have strong functional and technical discipline. And again, the technical can be just in relevance to Microsoft Biz Apps. I'm not asking them to be an enterprise architect, which in that case, I'd expect them to have much broader experience. They may include development, configuring, integration, interface security, availability as in uptime availability, storage and services. The role balances projects and the business needs and the technology. So they're an all-rounder. They should be very confident of where to bring in people when they've got a skill shortage. So, you know, I've had all these hats apart from developer in my career, but I've taught people how to code. Way back, there used to be a language called Perl, Practical Extraction Reporting Language, and even JavaScript I've taught way back in the day. But I wouldn't even attempt to develop anything, right? I'd call in specialists in any of those areas rather than attempt to do it myself. So when I look at what roles they interact with, the solution architect interacts with all roles. It generally leads all roles, but also has a strong interaction with the business. The solution architect will also have a strong relationship with the practice manager if you're working in a partner situation. And when I look at the paths to solution architect, I've already said you could come from a functional point of view or a developer point of view. I've had situations where developers have wanted to move into architecture but just lack communication skills. I remember one individual in Melbourne, Australia, I put on a project as moving from a developer to an architect, a role. And straight away, the individual is a very smart, technically savvy individual, but when he was in front of the customer, he would freeze up. He would struggle to communicate. So he'd have very sound ideas, but when you're presenting to a customer, they take that as he doesn't seem certain about what he's doing. He doesn't seem certain that he understands what he's talking about. He's very hesitant. And it was actually more that he wasn't a strong communicator. And so then I have to arrange for a rescue of that project because the customer goes, we don't like that. We don't think that person. It wasn't a personality thing. It was the ability to communicate confidently. And that's why back in Cohort 1, I'm saying communication is a key career skill that you must develop. And it's the only thing that I've seen hold developers back that didn't develop that skill. For whatever reason, I find most functional consultants tend to be much more people-orientated, a greater business focus in their mentality. Once again, this is just my experience, and I know I'm making a few generalizations in that respect. Forgive me for that. Okay, let's talk about some other roles. Next this is a customer partner or freelancer type role, and it's probably after we take those technical roles, put them to one side, I think change management is the most important thing that happens on any project. And why? Because I experienced it firsthand. Look at this stat here, 30 to 60% of projects, particularly CRM, the stat is relating to fail. And the number one reason in my experience is lack of change management. And so the excuse I get from salespeople, the customer doesn't want to buy, they can't afford change management. I said, well, don't even do the project then. Because if you can't afford a failed project, why even invest in the project to start with? The stats speak for themselves, right? Change management needs to be on every single project. No matter how small, how large, whatever it is, you need to have change managers or management. Now that might be somebody that has multiple hats, but the function of change manager, and on large projects, I've had dedicated teams of change managers on those projects. Why? Because I wanted a successful outcome. And so I built it into my pricing models and I sold it to customers that, they're going to have dropped, $1 million, $2 million on this project. Why don't they spend the additional to make sure this project is worthwhile 5-10 years down the track in its robustness? They don't want a project that 3 months after go live, nobody's using it, because people vote with their feet, right? They vote with how they whether they use the technology or not. And so change management is absolutely critical, important. If you're a functional consultant, I would add change management to your skill repertoire. If I was you, I highly recommend that. And what I found best is ProSci. People change results. In Australia, our company was the only ProSci training company in the country. And so I learned a lot about ProSci when I was there. And it's a very effective way to learn change management. Just let's look at some stats here from ProSci themselves. Without change management, employees feel surprised and besieged by change. When they're told all of a sudden this new software is your software, they're like, what? This is bad. And what they do is that they then start complaining to management and saying, what are you doing putting this technology in? It's making us go slower, we're less efficient. And so what change management does, particularly the model with ProSci and ADCAR there, is it teaches how to get the full senior leadership involved in the project from the get-go. Not only the senior leadership, the decision makers spending the money, but also all the people that are going to use the technology from the bottom of the organization. They all get involved in the project from day one. They get involved in the design iterations. They feel like they're invested. So they don't all of a sudden get landed with a new bit of software that they had no idea was coming. They've been part of the journey. And if I asked you if you wrote with your left hand or you've got a right hand dominance, and I asked you to switch and sign the other way around, you would struggle. You would say, listen, it's more efficient if I use my dominant hand. But if we said, listen, we're going to chop your dominant hand off in a couple of weeks, you're going to have to learn the new way. What would happen? There would be a change in, you'd feel that, okay, actually I can learn this and I can get to that point. Now, I'm not saying that, like we threaten stuff like that with, on a project like this, but what I'm saying is that change takes time for it to bed in. And so if you have a process that encourages that change, you're going to get better outcomes. You're not going to get failed projects, extended project schedules, cost overruns, and low adoption. Here's the winning side there. This is based on a lot of research. Employees feel prepared, equipped, and supported. 6 times more likely to meet your objectives, 5 times more likely to be on schedule, 2 times more likely to stay on budget, and capture people-dependent return on investment. So I can't stress enough the importance of learning something like ProSci. I've not seen anything compete against ProSci. I've heard people go, oh, we've got our own one that we use. It's homegrown. Well, this one's done by a lot of research, a lot of scientific backing, and everything I've seen about it is just a fantastic skill set to add to your skill set portfolio. Another role that you have in a business, and these roles here, as you can see, this one's partner side, is that of sales. And, I've had a lot of background experience in sales, done a lot of selling. And sales is an amazingly fun job, right? You get to go and tell a customer that we can do anything, mate. We can create the kitchen sink out of the system. We can build you anything you want, right? Salesperson doesn't have to worry about delivery. That's the delivery department. Well, I've sat as practice manager that, had high interface with sales and delivery. And of course, for me, sales is important that they were on point telling the truth because my team had to deliver it. But sales, sales is everybody's responsibility in business. It's not just the role of the person that has the sales title and gets the commission checks, right? It's everybody's involvement. And, how I learned sales is very simple. I took this here from Abraham Lincoln. All I've learned from books. My key kind of way of learning is by books. And so these are 4 books that I have found across my career. I've read all these books were very many moons ago that I read them, but each one impacts me. So let's get real or let's not play from Mahan Khalsa. If you've ever seen this guy, some old photos, he looks like a hippie guru. He has a robe on, long beard, long hair. You'd never think that he knew on business sales. But what I love about what he talks about is that in sales, it's about being upfront, truthful, and honest. I'm working on a project at the moment for Microsoft, pricing a project for them to deliver. And, one of the things I learned from this book, and I've applied it all the way through my career, is don't guess what the other person's thinking. Ask. So often what will happen is that you'll go in to build a project for a customer in the sales role, and you'll go, oh man, how much do we think we can sell this for, right? And you start guessing, you start taking in data points and going, how much can we sell it for? So what I would do is I'd be in a meeting like this and I'd say, listen, this project obviously just didn't turn up on your desk yesterday. You've been thinking about this for some time. How much have you allocated budget-wise? Don't give me an exact number. Give me a ballpark. Give me within 50, 100,000 type thing. So I've got a feel that we're not going to basically waste our time or your time creating quotes, pricing, etc. That's going to be off point. Every time I've done this, the customer has always been surprised. And I just did it with Microsoft the other day in this project. I said, listen, no point in me giving you data that, or pricing that's just not even feasible. You've already allocated your FY20 budget. What are we talking about here? And he straight up gave me a number. And so now when I go away and price, I'm not trying to push that number outside his budget range because then he has to seek approval from somebody else. I'm going to make sure that I take any fat out of my project. I keep in what they want delivered, but I'm not going to try and blow their budget out in the process. Much more likelihood of me being successful. High trust selling, the key thing I learned in this book here was about not doing $5 an hour jobs. What I mean by $5 an hour jobs, don't do jobs that other people could do with less skill than you. In other words, don't get caught up in jobs that are not using the fullness of your skill set, because it's better to pay someone else to do it. And I mean, yes, pay out of your own pocket if you have to. And I learned that very early on in my career. In my final role that I was in for 4 odd years, I had a full-time assistant working for me that the company didn't know about, apart from paying the bill or the expense that I expensed them for that individual to work for me. And they did everything. They answered my email. They responded to my email, as in they managed my schedule. They booked my appointments. They kept me abreast of anything that I needed to be across. They did a lot of the scheduling of my staff interactions and things like that. There's very smart ways that you can work these days. And I learned from this book, I'd much rather maximize my utilization, my rate that I earn by doing high value jobs and not kind of jobs that really somebody else can once get a job by doing these type of jobs without me needing to kind of do busy work, if you like. Spin selling is written by a bunch of researchers and scientists, so not salespeople. What they did was researched a lot of salespeople. And once again, a brilliant step-by-step book around solution, problem, implication, need, and payoff in sales. And then the Challenger sales came out around the global financial crisis, when really nobody was selling anymore because nobody was buying. And it really dealt with the need to be an educator when it came to sales. So all these books really apply to our industry. None of these are on your assignment. I'm just giving you what worked for me. You know, if you're in a relationship or you have a partner, you're in sales. You got them to agree that it was worth spending time with you longer than any other individual on earth. So really, at the end of the day, don't think of sales as the sleazy car salesperson type thing that sometimes is associated with it. Everybody's in sales. Either you're effective at it or you're not effective at it, and you end up with lemons. So your choice. Pre-sales. Pre-sales is one of my favorite roles, and it's one that I've operated in. Even as practice manager, I was often the main pre-sales person called in. Once again, partner side type role. And this is, you know, this individual knows how to do presentations. They know how to do demos, but doing demos is way different than teaching people. They know how to demo only what is needed and no more, right, to get the sale over the line. They're great storytellers. They understand the customer's business, and when they're demonstrating how the technology can help the business, it's always in context of the customer. It's never about features that the product has. Look at this cool feature. This is my favorite feature. None of that type of stuff. It's all about what is the benefit of this technology in the customer's hands. And so it's a very skillful skill to develop. And I feel you've got to be working with the technology for some years to get fluent in it, to build your own stories, your own war runes, your things that kind of appeal to customers, whichever ones you engage with. So, you know, it's a particular role that I've loved. And the reason I've loved it is I did this training by 2Win Global many years ago. Microsoft in New Zealand put this training on for partners, and it was called Demo to Win and Discovery to Win, were the 2 courses that I did. I have not come across better demo training than what is offered here, in that it uses a movie metaphor, in that you have the opening, you set up, you know, the scene that's going to set the course of the movie. Then you have various parts or sections of the movie that are set up and then, you know, are told and move you into the next session, build on the previous. It talks a lot about how your brain processes information. There's a book called Demo to Win. I highly recommend you read this. It's a bit dry, I'll be straight up with you. The courses are much better, but they're over £2 a day, 2,000 quid a day, or $2,000 a day. So if you ever see Microsoft putting these on and they're offering to pay, put your hand up and make sure you get on that training. Once again, of all the training I've done in my career, this, and I've done a lot of training, this is the best training I have ever done, in that of the 3 days that I might have spent doing it, I earned literally millions and millions of dollars in sales off applying what I learned in that type of training. The author of the book was a guy that sold ERP systems. back in the day. So it's really aligned to the area of biz apps that we're in. Another partner type role you can have is that of a marketer. And, marketing is, more and more partners are seriously investing in marketing. How do they stand out from the noise? How do they keep a constant feed of new people interested in having implementation work done for them? So this is another area that you can get into. And if you've got background skills in the technology, it's much easier to market because you kind of know why customers buy it a lot more. You don't necessarily, I've found some of my most effective marketers weren't formally trained as marketers. They understood how customers would use the technology. They understood products like, what Click Dimensions offers and now Microsoft Dynamics Marketing, and were able to effectively run campaigns. They picked up things like AdWords and using social media for marketing, etc. Putting on lunch and learns, putting on, boardroom breakfasts was another common one that we would do with our marketing team, put on quarterly engagements around various industry sectors, all great marketing functions. Next partner role is practice manager. And this is a role that I had for many, many years. And why I put up the sign delayed is because I'm illustrating here the massive juggling game that a practice manager must play. They must be, great when it comes to radical candor. They must be brilliant when it comes to EQ and understanding what's happening on various projects that they get pulled into. How is that project delivery happening? How is their personal lives affecting them and their delivery? How is the customer interactions affecting the project? How do a practice manager needs to manage constantly competing priorities? They must manage budgets, making sure utilization is right, dealing constantly with ambiguity, more than one project on the time at all times, juggling people, projects, deadlines. Cost, quality, time, and scope are all on their radar, utilization, and then, of course, constantly hiring, recruiting resources without recruiting too many resources that you don't want them sitting on the bench. So, and then, of course, the software to manage that entire process effectively, getting good reports, understanding the financial implications of decisions being made, critically important. Next, another partner role is you can become the boss. Run the show, right? Have deep pockets, have a thick skin. A good boss always knows when to bring in, once again, expertise where they're not strong in. I was always very good in running the practice side of things, very good around sales, good understanding of marketing. But when it came to money, I always wanted to have a good financial person involved in the calculations with me. One of my colleagues, a guy called Jason Ferguson in WA, absolute guru when it came to the money. So I wouldn't even attempt to do it. He would master it. I would, his calculations were thorough, protected us from ever kind of underscoping or underpricing projects, etc., and make sure, we stayed and grew financially on our projects. So a boss, though, has to have vision. They have to have strategy. They have to have people smarts, technology smarts, business smarts, finance smarts, radical candor, and EQ, of course. All the package of a good boss. A lot of people fall into becoming a boss, right? They just get promoted to the point that they're the boss. But there's a lot of skills to be learned. A good boss will constantly be learning. A good boss will never feel like they know everything, but they will do their best to get the best people on their team to be successful. The next roles we're looking at are customer-facing roles. So this one here, I've got Power Platform Administrator or Dynamics Administrator. This is how a lot of people enter Microsoft Biz Apps, their career. They've been in IT in a business. They've been assigned to be the administrator for an implementation maybe done by a partner. And now it's their job to run the show and to maintain it, add users, to change workflows, update, clean up tables of historic data, that type of thing. And so this is a great role. A lot of people is a good entry role, but I've found a lot of administrators, once they get a taste for it, then they want to get into the building side of it and want to pivot and maybe go work partner side, but it's a good starting point. DevOps is another role that I've seen develop on the customer side massively, where developers and then operations work together. The best example I can give that I've been recently kind of gained an understanding with Manuela is at Virgin Atlantic, where they've decided that the Power Platform is part of their key strategy going forward. And so therefore they have a team of developers and operators constantly working in unison to build or move line of business applications to the platform. So it's an ongoing process. Build some functionality, deploy it to the organization. Build some more, take feedback, build some more functionality, deploy it to the organization. And so here's an example that, you know, I picked up many moons ago in New Orleans when I was there. And this was a medical organization. And they counted up, there were 200, I think, within that organization, bits of software that did different things. 106 of them were all case management type apps. Each of them had a training overhead, a security requirement. In other words, they had to be validated whether they're still, you know, free from being hacked. Scheduling, reporting, all these kind of things were required for all these individual apps. So they decided, you know what, we're going to choose, in this case, it was the XRM platform, and they decided from there to start at end of life of all these applications. They found out of these number of applications, all of them could be moved to an XRM platform, or what we now call a Power Platform. And so they went on this journey of owning the resources in-house. When I say resources, developers, architects, that type of thing, and built and slowly over multiple years transferred these applications into the organization. Another option you have is to become a freelancer or go independent and say, you know what, I can do what the big partners are doing. I'm going to go independent. So I ultimately think this is going to be the future of many, many people, hence why I'm a big proponent of building personal brands. And the reason is there's a lot of research being done now in this, a lot of research being done in the UK here recently. I think I might have been on a TED talk the other day, I might have been reading, I can't remember which. But some of the data coming out of people going freelance, right? Fundamentally, you get to choose your time if you do it right. In other words, if you charge the right amount of money, that gives you the freedom to not be working all the time. So you don't want to be working 365 days of the year. You want to balance this by charging the right rates, but you can't charge the rates of a big enterprise partner because they've got overheads, right, that are included in your rates. Just because you've been billed out at $250 an hour at the partner you work with doesn't mean you're going to go earn $250 an hour as a freelancer. Because if you're going to be contracted into a project, other people want to make margins on that project. If you've done any work with Microsoft Consulting Services, they want to make their margin as well. So everybody wants a clip of that time. And as a freelancer, don't think you're going to go necessarily up to that same rate. But it's a worthwhile endeavor. I know I've mentioned this already. Look at the book, Business of One. So rather than thinking of yourself just as a freelancer or an independent person, thinking of yourself as a business of one, because it changes your mentality and how you set up your financial structure for operating as an individual operator. But it is absolutely stoked with opportunities. You know, this is I've done a full year now as a freelance independent operator, and I love it. And it's each year, I know that this year is even getting better that we're moving into now. So, the other thing is, keep in mind, just, you know, don't go and resign before you've got at least your first 6 months to 12 months already booked in advance if you're coming up from a technical point of view. And remember, your friends and family or those customers that love you on their project are only going to have so much work, and at some point that's going to dry up. So you need to be thinking, how do I get new work? I just had an MVP a couple of weeks ago contacted me from the US, and she was like, I've run out of work, and she's an independent contractor. What do I do? And I'm like, well, how did you get into this position? Like, let's have a look at your LinkedIn profile. The LinkedIn profile was, you know, non-existent. And I'm like, listen, if you're not constantly feeding things like LinkedIn and making it clear kind of what your expertise, in other words, hey, I've just done this, just did this or solved this problem for a customer. Don't have to give any, IP away from the customer or anything like that. But people are constantly hearing, you're doing this and you're solving these problems. Oh, you could help me to solve that problem. That's something you could do for me. So you've got to maintain, remember, if you're going independent, you are the marketer, you are the salesperson. All those hats are yours when you become freelance and independent. But I highly recommend, if you're so way inclined, it is an incredible journey. Next, you could consider starting your own business, starting your own practice, become a system integrator. Right? Become a Microsoft partner. They left all the internal user rights benefits in there for you to use, and you can start your own business. Once again, I've gone down this journey. I've done, you know, started my own practice. The one word I would have here for you is make sure you have capital. operating capital to scale and get to a size that you become sustainable. So it's something that you need to have done your sums on. Don't just wing it. What I've seen a lot of partners or boutique partners start out, though, is that the individual's gone independent, then they start hiring people. Excuse me. So they then become a Microsoft partner just by staying in it long enough and actually adding resources. But remember, their payroll, their family, the mouths that they feed becomes your responsibility as that business owner. And you often end up paying yourself last. Next, you could consider becoming a startup, like becoming a software developer, become an independent software vendor, start your own company. Once again, this is exciting. If you've got a brilliant idea, make sure you've kind of got a plan, not just around the idea, but how to validate the idea and market, and then take the idea to market. This is another area that I'm involved in right now in a new startup that you're bound to hear about later in this year once we reveal it to the market. It's an exciting thing to do. A lot of opportunity. It mixes together a whole bunch of career skills to bring a product to market. And, you know, Microsoft just have said something like $120 billion is the ISV business that they're looking at. That's why there's all these ISV changes in the Microsoft BizApp ecosystem, because there's going to be a lot of opportunity. There's Salesforce ISVs that are over $1 billion businesses at just selling add-ons to Salesforce. So this opportunity, of course, is all available to us on the Power Platform. An exciting thing, you know, I'm sure that you've had ideas of what you could build product-wise. It's a case of getting the right people around you, and who knows, take that product to market. Could be quite exciting. You could go work for Microsoft, right? Careers.microsoft.com is where they advertise all the jobs. You know, I've talked about solution sales professional, technology solutions professional, global black belts, P sellers or partner sellers, MCS, Microsoft Consulting Services, all different ways that you can kind of get into Microsoft. And if you've, you know, got the experience, Microsoft are constantly employing people in this area. One of the persons or people, one of the individuals on my last cohort, my last time I ran the mentoring last year in Canada, at the conclusion of this, I went through, did a bit of one-on-one coaching with him as he applied for a TSP role. And I went through what he had to do a presentation, he had to do a live demo, etc. to them. I was a sounding board for that. And at the end of the process, he came back very excited. He'd been offered the job. So you definitely, if you've got a good experience in the space, it's relatively straightforward, you know, to keep an eye out for those Microsoft jobs. If you've got the skills, and you want to work for the mothership, the #1 ranked company in the world, it is absolutely within your grasp. So we come to this point here, and once again, we'll end how we started. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. And of course, Dr. Zeus said this, you are at a pathway now. You've kind of learned a lot over the past weeks and have the choice about which way you want to go. You don't have to stay where you are. You might choose to stay where you are and grow or pivot in your role. But really, you've got some choices to make about where you're going to take your career and what will be the implication of those choices on your family. So consider that. That brings us to the end. What do we got? 10 minutes. I'll just run through a couple of things before I open the mics. The 90-day mentoring challenge feedback. This is in the assignment. This is the form which I said at the very start, 5-star, sorry, it's a net promoter score. There's a 5-star rating on it. Give me your feedback about this program. I'm very, very keen to see what you have to say. Would you recommend it to others? And then your final assignment is to go through the assignment sheet and then schedule your one-on-one with me. There's my email address, mark.smith@cloverbase.com, and set up the time where you want to run through what your plan is, what your next 12 months, 24 and 36-month kind of vision looks like. So this one is going to be a chance for you to bounce your ideas off me. It's to get my input around any questions you want me to consider for you, and it's your chance to present back what your action plan is moving forward. And, you know, it doesn't end there. Is that I will, you know, you can contact me. Plenty of people from last time contact me after the fact when they're considering new jobs. I just did a call with a guy in Auckland the other day who had gone for 3 jobs and got turned down for them all. don't know how that line appeared on screen. Someone's using the drawing tool. That happened in another session. Anyhow, so yeah, so consider booking the one-on-one. Let's get it done in the next couple of weeks. Send me an email that you're wanting to set up a one-on-one. Let's get in my diary. Let's do that time. And my final challenge to you is this. Just like we started, how are you going to pay it forward? What are you going to do in taking what you've learned here, not applying just for yourself, but how are you going to help other people in their career, life, using the skills and the talents you have? And with that, I open the mics for any questions before we finish up.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Hey, it's Megan. So you said in terms of sending you an email, so is it sending you an email saying this is a time that I propose, or do you have like a calendar where you'll be able to go to and pick times? What's your preferred?
If you know how to use Find Time from Office 365, just send me 3 slots that work for you. And, you know, for any of you outside the UK, I live in the UK, so just think about our time zone crossover. But yeah, send me 3 times and we'll be able to juggle it around from there and work out which works best for you.
And you expecting like some kind of like formal presentation, or is it kind of our time to use in whichever format we think is?
You can use it in any format that you think will benefit you the most. Like last time I had people that done full mind maps of 12 months, 24, 36. Some people did full PowerPoint presentations to me and went through their logic and asked for feedback on the way they were thinking. Some people just, you know, had no presentation whatsoever and just had lots of questions and stuff. It's for you to kind of fill in anything that you feel that couldn't be asked in a group setting, but you want to discuss that's kind of personal, you know, unique to your situation.
All right, thanks.
Pleasure. Anybody else?
Hello.
Hello, Joe.
Yo, so I've obviously gone through this, and I'm in a situation that's kind of different from a lot of people, where I'm completely outside of the field. So I want to come in, I have a developer background, I'm obviously learning the platform. How do you think it's best for someone like me to enter like the industry, really?
For you, specifically, I would recommend going to a partner.
Okay.
The reason is that you want to get exposure to a bunch of projects. If you go customer side, you're not going to get the level of exposure that you kind of need to kind of find what works best for you. Now, so I recommend go to partner, get really clear, get the training, get on projects, cut your teeth into it, and then don't stay at partner long term. You know, make sure you move your career forward. Maybe, you know, you're young enough, do a startup, you know, become your own boss. That's the path I recommend for everybody. Ultimately.
Sure. Awesome. Cheers.
Mark, sorry, how long's the time slot? Half an hour or an hour?
Whatever you want.
Right, let's take 3 hours then.
Not a day. You have to give me coffee for a day. Daniel, have you come off? Can't hear your audio, mate.
Hello? Hello, this is Tim.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, Tim. Okay, you're up. I've got a few mics open. What's up?
Hi. I was just wondering if anybody uses Upwork to find like Power BI jobs, and if so, have you had any luck? They charge like 15 cents every time you want to apply, which is nothing if you do get it, but just wondering.
Wow, is that so? I use Upwork a lot, right, to run my business. And so my podcast, for example, I use Upwork people to do the post-production on my podcast. I didn't realize that now people applying for jobs on Upwork had to pay money to apply for a job. That's new. I didn't realize.
Yep.
But I've not used it I've spent over $20,000 on Upwork, right? So quite a bit of money. So before Office 365 or before Skype for Business was available as a cloud offering in Magnetism, New Zealand, I paid a guy in Pakistan to put in 10 phone lines into my business, set it all up on a virtualized server that I had. And he's gone on to become, he's got his whole own company now in that space, does jobs all over the world. And hey, I found him on Upwork, and he knew voice over IP like better than anybody, and at a fraction of their price that I could find in New Zealand. So I've had some really good experiences with Upwork. The biggest thing nowadays, you got to make sure you're not, engaging where people are, they're shopping other people's skills. So they're operating as aggregators on Upwork. So,
Right.
but yeah, I don't know. I've heard some horror stories from people in the dynamic space that were on Upwork and that don't get paid because of unscrupulous people that they've worked for. So yeah, I don't know. I think if nowadays, I think that our industry is so tight knit, and if you get into the community and get a profile on knowing that you're a contractor for example, Power BI, you'd potentially pick up work quicker by writing posts and stuff on LinkedIn, I feel, to get the type of skills that you want quicker.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I may jump in on that, yeah, I confirm what Mark was saying, meaning that if you have some connections with people. Personally, I'm working as a freelancer now and looking to pivot as a business later on. But I've been working more with recruiters because I don't have the sales side, but they do have that, and I see that as a collaboration. And that works best with me for opportunity generation, for lead generation, basically.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good. Anything else? 3 minutes.
And
Who's talking? I got some. The audio's not coming through. No audio. Mandar, if that's you talking, I can't hear your audio. And see you moving, but no audio.
I think it was Gentian,
Okay.
but he's frozen.
He's frozen. Okay, no luck there. Anybody else?
Nice use of Forms Pro, Mark, in your survey.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've heard it's good.
Who's talking? Who's talking? Sorry, your audio. Whoever's talking, I'm not quite hearing you.
Yeah.
It's Gentian again.
Jinton, for whatever reason, we can't hear your audio. It's just not coming through. Oh, you've disappeared now. Any other questions? Beth, I see you're off mute. Did you have a question? No.
Says her mic isn't working.
Sorry.
My mic's okay. I see that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap it up then. I'm going to get this recording up and online. It's been great working with you all. I look forward to the one-on-ones. I'm going to leave the Facebook group up there till it's a logical point to close down. There's like nothing pressing, but when I sense that people have stopped really chatting up there, I'll close it down. And remember, I'll delete everything out because FY20 will be the next time I run this. If you know of anybody that would be interested in that, make sure you get them to go up and register on my webpage for it. Because I go through that list on a first come, first serve basis for FY20. I haven't even decided the dates that I'm running it in FY20. I might do it at the start of the year, mid-year. I just don't know. It'll all depend closer to that time. Anyhow, thanks everybody. It's been awesome. I've really enjoyed this. I've loved seeing the videos that have come through in Facebook. It's been totally epic. And I hope you do your last assignments and we get to do those one-on-ones real soon. And of course, I'm bound to see all of you around the community from time to time. Ciao.